Hi, we're John and Julie Clark. We're Calvary missionaries serving in Mali in West Africa. Today I made a list of my fears. And a lot of these fears are because of where we live, because Mali is one of the most dangerous countries to live in the world today. That's because there's an active war in the country now with Islamic jihadists that are trying to take over the country. As a result, terrorist attacks are quite common. We live under a constant threat of kidnapping because they take Westerners for ransom. Most of our friends live in homes fortified with 10-foot walls topped with razor wire. Inside their houses, they have a panic room or safe room. We've been instructed on many occasions by security experts to make these same modifications to our home. As I continue with my list, I look at the lack of modern medical care here in Mali. In fact, in Mali, even the doctors say that people go to the hospital to die. We've been medevaced out of the country 4 separate times. We've been dealing with the COVID pandemic just like the rest of the world has, only we don't have adequate facilities or personnel in order to deal with it. In addition to this, we're also dealing with diseases that a lot of the rest of the world doesn't have, including malaria, typhoid, cholera, Ebola, yellow fever. These are all realities here today in Mali. In fact, in Mali, the life expectancy is only 58 years is the average life expectancy. In addition to that, we have a very corrupt and unstable government. We've been through 2 military coups since we lived here, the most recent just back in August. Today, we're living under a military government. They've promised democratic elections next year, but most people aren't very hopeful of that. As a result, we have a lot of violent protests and demonstrations on the streets every day, in addition to labor strikes and unrest. I had to stop on my list today because it just came overwhelming for me.
You know, I made a list today too. And as I remembered my fears about living in Mali, I also remembered God's goodness and grace in seeing us through those times of trauma or insecurity or uncertainty. During those times of civil unrest, riots, and protests, especially this last summer, God reminded me that this violence was never directed towards Christians nor towards Americans, and I felt safe being here. When those protests happen, the international borders as well as the airport are closed. I have no escape out of this country. But rather than focus on my fear, God gave me the provision and the peace and the protection to stay here during those times. Last summer, I was in need of kidney surgery, and God provided a brand new, modern Turkish hospital with the exact specialist that I needed for my condition. And for terrorist threats, interestingly enough, God met a young man who used to be a jihadist that has now given his life to the Lord and is a believer. John continues to disciple him, and this young man, because of his unique security position, gives us information that we need to stay safe against terrorist threats now.
I sure like Julie's list a whole lot better than my list. And it's a reminder that we have a choice to make every day. Now, we're not perfect. And there are times when we are overcome by our fears, just like you are. And when those times happen, we stop and we pray. And we remember the testimonies. We remember the good things that God has done in the way He's seen us through in the past. And we put our trust in Him, knowing that we can depend on Him in every circumstance.
You know, something that helped us do that, prepared us to do that, is something that we started about 2 years ago. Every morning, the very first thing John and I do when we wake up is we get on the side of our bed, and as a couple, we pray to God and we remember the good things He has done. And we are filled with thanksgiving and trust and faith that He will see us through the day to come.
You have the same choices to make every day. You can focus on your fears, or you can focus on the things that God has done in your life.